Hi, guys. Andrew Lawman here, and welcome to the event Creating Wealth in a Post-Human World. We have brought two thought leaders in this space, Perry Kundert and Andrew Krapuschetz, and I'll be introducing in a bit. And I am the host, Andrew Lawman, and I'm the co-founder of Market Edge, and we will have a lot to share in the weeks and months to come about the vision of Market Edge Pro and our audacious hope in building innovation solutions within the parallel economy to disrupt the woke business models. We're creating a few examples of what we're doing is creating a healthcare coalition, and we've invited Andrew to help us do some recruiting and innovation in that space. So we're creating a coalition to talk about human-centric solutions, as well as we are also bringing out a robotics farming systems, and you can check that out at cureforhunger.live, and that will be they'll be presenting on a solution that will cut the production costs of food production by 20%. So we're doing a lot of cool stuff like that, marketedge.pro. And so the format of the event will have Tom Fisher as our co-host. Thanks for joining us, Tom. You are now live.
You doing there, Drew?
And hey. And the format of this event, yeah, you too. And the format of this event will be for 45 to 50 minutes. We'll be speaking with our speakers. And then for the last 10 to 15 minutes, we'll answer any questions from the audience. And so with our next event, we have a next event coming up, and it's AI Mastery for Business Leaders, Navigating the Path to Scaling. You can check that out on LinkedIn. That's April 4th. And I also have created a Rebels Guide, and we'll be publishing it to Amazon soon. And if you want a free copy of that, you can email me at andrew@marketedge.pro. And so with that said, I'd like to introduce our hosts and our speakers. And one of our speakers is driving right now, so we don't know if he'll be showing up, but we do have Andrew with us. So Thomas, if you'd like to share a little bit about yourself, and then we'll jump over to Andrew, and then hopefully Perry when he's on board here.
Well, I'm Thomas Fisher. I'm known Andrew for a few years. I guess I could be called a serial entrepreneur. My wife and I own a wood packaging company. We distribute wood crates, wood pallets, and we also have a marketing endeavor called Smoking Catapult, which is in the digital web development space. And then the other one is aligning startups and entrepreneurs for looking for funding or marketing concepts to build and grow their business. That's called Global Catapult. So, and I'm also a conspiracy theorist extraordinaire, which you'll soon discover.
Perfect, thank you. And Andrew, you want to jump in and share a bit about yourself?
I should say it's not conspiracy when it comes true. But
yeah, exactly. That's the trick is I think the CIA actually made up that term conspiracy theory. But anyway, Andrew Krapuschetz, the last name is real. It's French. It has a variety of swear words built in, which is nice. And I've been blessed to start quite a few businesses over the years. Grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area, did the .com thing down there, which was a great learning adventure. Kind of learned a lot of things to do and a lot of things not to do while down there. Got involved in businesses, getting millions of dollars of funding. Saw that cause problems inside the businesses. And saw businesses do very, very well. So I was very blessed to be part of that. At the ripe old age of 22, I moved up to Idaho, where I now live with my beautiful wife and 5 kids. We have 60 acres, 10 minutes from the office. I also have started a whole variety of businesses up here, a 3D printing business that we ended up selling to Stryker, a student information software business we sold to the employees, an MBO. I started a labor market data business that I built to about $50 million. So I've had 6 successful exits over the years. I do housing development. I have commercial properties, and I have very few hobbies because I just work all the time. So my main gig right now is I'm running Red Balloon, as Andrew or Drew, as we're going to call him on this, just to keep things clear. I got to stick with the first name, and Andrew had to go to Drew. I now run Red Balloon, and this was a business that I accidentally started about 2.5 years ago. I was the CEO of a large company at that point, and my board decided that I was a little too conservative and Christian for their liking. I found myself delightfully unemployed, and I thought, well, if that happened to me, it's going to happen to other people. So what if I create a landing place where people who believe in free speech and meritocracy can find jobs where their freedoms are going to be respected. And so in about 2-ish years, we have 4,000 businesses in the US. We have 2 million job seekers have been on the site, and we're just trying to stand up for freedom and stand up for what used to be normal. So that's who I am, and that's what I'm doing right now.
Right on. Thank you. And Perry, can you hear us? And are you able to add to what Andrew just shared with us? I guess not. So until Perry can jump in here, I'm just going to move ahead with some of the questions that I have lined up.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Here we go. Great. Perry, do you want to do a little bit of an intro on yourself?
Sure, yeah. I'm a 40-year professional in the computer industry. The last 30 years focused on industrial control, large-scale distributed systems, and the last 20 years focused on monetary system design and as well as industrial control and synthetic radio communications and all sorts of interesting stuff. And the last 10 years, more or less, focused on advanced cryptocurrency development.
Okay, right on. Thanks. And like I said, Perry is driving in the Alberta Rockies, so he'll be joining us. He'll be in and out of this conversation. So, one of the scriptures that came to mind when I was thinking about this event was Psalms 84:5-7, and it says, "Blessed are those whose strength is in you, whose hearts are set on pilgrimage as they pass through the valley of Baca. They make it a place of springs. The autumn rains also cover it with pools. They go from strength to strength till they appear before God in Zion." And so we've really seen that over this last season where we've really had to push through a lot of tyrannical type of controls. And right now I just see, is everyone still with us or is it frozen? Tom, are
Yep,
you with
here.
us?
I see you.
Tom's frozen. Okay, we'll just keep going here. So, Andrew, you really encouraged me when I saw you guys on LinkedIn and you guys standing for freedom. And it was one of the few businesses that really took such a strong stance. And so I guess I just like to start there with you, Andrew, and just give me an idea of how that took place, how you kind of were a pioneer, like it talks about in that psalm, and how you just saw maybe an opportunity, but then at the same time, a place where you could stand strong for something that was right.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a good question. When I left my last business, honestly, it was a little bit of a painful transition. But it was clear to me that I was basically being given a choice between my job and my values. And I've found that over the years, when you make an investment decision, when you make a decision to start a business, and the motivation is to bless other people who you see a problem with them, right? And this is the classic entrepreneur problem mindset. We see a problem that other people have, then we find out if other people have that problem, and they're like, well, what if we could solve that problem at scale? That's how we're going to turn this into a business. And if you read George Gilder and others, they talk about entrepreneurs are in this constant die to self process that turns out to generate a ton of money for themselves and for their family and so on and so forth. But really the starting point is always, how do I bless other people, and how do I do it at a scale that is going to that is going to be meaningful to them. And so that's really where I started with Red Balloon. I'll be honest, it really was not the first thing that I wanted to do. A job board, it's a hard business to get into. It's a two-sided marketplace. You have to have scale or stickiness. It's a tough type of business to get into. But it was very clear to me that that's what I needed to do. And it's funny how God builds us up, because when you get removed from your business, when you get that you've helped found, it was me and two economists. So there were three of us. We built it to hundreds of employees, offices all over the world. And you get removed from that. Well, it starts, you build up some calluses that you just don't care if people are like, well, why are you acting like a conservative? Why are you acting like a Christian? It's like, well, because that's who I am. And I think in our world today, a lot of people self-censor. They feel like they have to just keep their head down. They're not willing to stand up because they're afraid what the cost might be. And I've been blessed to have to count the cost and make some big decisions that cost a bunch of money. And I am so blessed to be on the other side of that. So it's interesting when I first started Red Balloon. I'm kind of going along. I'm like, well, I'm gonna mess with this business. And I had a good friend who was an executive from Career Builder, big, kind of standard job board out there. And he's like, look, I don't know that I totally agree with your politics, but you just found a market niche that happens to be half the country. Well, if that's true, and I think it is, then the parallel economy, this freedom economy, is an enormous market opportunity, right? So you start by doing the right thing, and then you find out that in God's goodness, that right thing is a huge market opportunity. And there's a reason that Red Balloon has grown faster than almost any other job board that I can find data on. It has grown faster than many technology businesses. It's because we started by standing for the right thing and found out that it was a massive market niche that I don't know that I would have had the intelligence to find early on. But because I started by trying to bless people at scale, then all of a sudden, like, oh, I found myself in this. So I'm not a genius. I'm not a, market shaker who can see things out in the future. What I can see is that if you seek to truly bless other people, when you try and say, look, other people have problems, I'm going to go and solve those. Sometimes that's how you find the biggest innovation in a marketplace. And so that's what we did with Red Balloon. And early on, we started working with companies like Public Square or Revere Pay or Patmos or Liberation Technology and kind of all these other early companies in this parallel economy. And most of those were born out of the COVID craziness, where people kind of lost their mind and were displaced for whatever reason. I talked to one lady down in Orlando, and she said, and she's a large Hispanic church. She says 52 businesses have started since COVID. 52 businesses in her little church community because these people were displaced and you didn't really have another option. And so, again, I think that this is one of the largest market opportunities right now is this parallel economy serving people who don't hate your worldview, who actually just, want to get back to what normal was 10 years ago and stand for freedom. And when you do that, when you're brave, you give courage to everyone else that's around you. And so that's the other big life lesson that I've gotten out of all of this starting Red Balloon. I have gotten hundreds of thank you notes from perfect strangers saying, I feel more bold in my workplace because I know that there's a backup plan and that I'm not alone. Because we all know that if you're the only person who's standing for something, it's harder. It's a lot harder. But if you know you're with other people, that's why, conversations like this are very important. When you're with other people, it's a lot easier to be brave. I've also gotten thank you notes, people just saying, look, you changed the trajectory of my family because I found a job where I could be free. Or I've had 3 people write me and say, you've saved my marriage because the job that I was able to get through Red Balloon. Because when you swim in woke waters for 8 to 10 hours a day, it has a disproportionate impact on your worldview and how you think about the world. And so just standing up and doing the right thing, giving all these families an opportunity, has been real blessing for me. So anyway, sorry, that was a long answer to a short question.
I'd like to just add a couple things. Like, so what you're saying is that, as evil as the last 3 years in the pandemic it was for some, the Lord through our faith has actually turned it into abundance and favor. What I mean by that is every one of us has got God-given talents and spiritual gifts. So when you take us and wake us up and shake us, all of a sudden our innate understanding of who we are through our Savior comes out of us. And businesses are not only formed, but we're actually better versions of ourselves because we're forced to be introspective. Take a hard look at, like, what does it look like to not be part of corporate America or corporate North America?
Totally.
And the meritocracy is this, which is what exactly you're talking about, is we've been kind of forced into that, haven't we? Right? By the merit, which is we have to look at using our talents and our abilities to the greater good. And when we put God and Jesus in the mix, you're unstoppable. It's unstoppable because all the laneways, all the plans that our creator has for us become very easily detectable and seen and visible and actionable. Right?
Yep. Yeah. My wife reminded me as I was, leaving this business, very painful. She's like, if the Apostle Paul hadn't been put in prison, we probably wouldn't have the New Testament. So, this is what God uses to build up his people. God cares more about the players than the score. And when you keep that in mind, you're a player. He cares about you. And he generally blesses you by the shaking, right? It's just not always fun in the middle.
So Perry, can you hear us? Are you still with us? And that was perfect, Thomas.
Thank you.
Okay, I guess Perry's not with us right now. So Andrew, back to you. Today's event, the idea of it is, there's a huge election happening here in the United States. And, for us in the parallel economy, we're obviously rooting for Donald Trump, but there's a lot of obstacles that are standing in the way. And one of those obstacles is called a black swan event. So before we dig into what that is, what I'd like to focus on is just some of the good things you see coming about, such as some of the leaders that have emerged and taken over, like in Argentina and Italy, in Holland. And where do you see some real places that you see a great emergence of hope coming from, in the place of either politics or business or in culture that, we'll start to really see significant movement behind it?
Yeah. The funny thing about black swan events is, if you can predict them, then maybe they're not a black swan event, because it's always this, unprecedented. And sometimes you can see signs of them, right? And that's part of the reason we talk about it. What's the most encouraging to me is not one single thing. Ben Horowitz always says there's no silver bullets, there's only lead bullets. And here in America, we love our bullets. So, but there's only lead bullets, so keep shooting. Like, there's no silver. There's not one thing in business particularly that's going to change everything. So we do this Freedom Economy Index every month, where we survey 80,000 businesses and ask them a variety of things. Well, one of the things we asked them recently is about this TikTok ban, right? About the government doing the ban of, the CCP and all this stuff. And I want to start by saying, look, the CCP is an evil organization. I'm just going to come out and say that. And maybe this is going to, now get censored everywhere. But I think they're trying to control the world in a very unhealthy way. But when we asked our businesses about the TikTok ban, I would say if we'd asked them 2 years ago or right before COVID, I'd say 80% of them would be like, "Oh, that's great. Yeah, we should ban that stuff." Nobody wants the CCP. What we found is over half of them in this recent survey last month that just came out 2 days ago said, "I don't think that Congress should be doing this." And what it was encouraging to me about that is they're thinking about the issue, right? And so what has happened, the reason that tyranny has been able to thrive in the world over the last couple of years is because people just started taking things at face value. They didn't think about them. And so that would be my encouragement. Like, and Thomas talks about, like, it's a conspiracy theory until it's true. I think people are thinking in a way that they haven't in the past. And that's why I think we're starting to see that in politics. There was a small town in, not a small town, a large town in Florida that has always had a Democrat liberal mayor and recently just switched to have a conservative red state mayor. You see this happening. You mentioned Holland, even places like Poland, Italy. Well, I don't agree that all these people are, Trump has his problems, but I think people are thinking about things. So I'd say the biggest encouragement in the world to me right now is that people are thinking, and COVID caused them to think, because everybody took it at face value. Oh, I put a mask on my face. That'll stop a virus that could go through that mask in like a hot second. Here's an untested vaccine. Let me have it, right? People are thinking right now. So that's my most encouraging thing that I can point to right now in the world. I don't know, Thomas, what do you think on that?
Yeah, I was just listening to you talk about like the TikTok ban, right? So
yeah,
I'm the kind of guy that looks at it's easy for people to get polarized around the CCP. So that's the thing that they're going to hypnotize us with.
Yeah, exactly.
What people don't realize is that, what a lot of people aren't realizing is these are all things that they're putting in power. They're going to shoot for the moon.
Yeah.
Right. And then they're going to let it get parsed back, and then it's a wedge.
Yeah.
So they're
and it's like,
looking
we got to get rid of Twitter now. We need to, right?
Where
100%.
does it end, right? It's a moving stick. So what they'll do is they got China as the bad guy. Well, next thing you know, they'll find a way to make Twitter connected to Russia, and then RT, and then what'll happen is it'll be, well, we can't have those guys either.
Right.
This is how freedoms and the freedom of expression, the freedom of speech, they'll take us, they'll get rid of us. We won't be able to speak our mind. Our opinions will become criminal, which is what's going on in Canada right now. Right now, they've got a hate speech bill. People don't realize it's not, and you got to look at the coincidence of the TikTok ban bill, and you've got right at the same time, you got a bill in Canada talking about hate speech. And what's hate speech based around? Well, the bullying of children. How can we not be around the children? How could you not support the children? So they box us into a way where we can't have an opinion, because the opinion is automatically evil because you're against what seems real. And wait, how could you not want to support children? I do, absolutely. But telling me I can't go out and tell the world what I think of fossil fuels or what I think of some of the ideologies or of the alphabet, whatever, doesn't mean you don't have a right to do that, because
that's right.
The whole idea of freedom is to have dialogue, to have discussion. I'm not a alt-right wing conspiracy theorist. I'm not alt-right at all. Do I have some of those, like, the right views of center? Sure. Am I conservative? Absolutely. But to call me alt-right, that's another tactic. It's Marxism. It's you're this and that's what you are, and you're going to be in that lane forever.
That's right.
No.
That's right.
Right. And that's what they're doing. It's all about their camp. What camp are you in? You don't want to protect the children? Absolutely, I do. Someone goes out and hurts children, they absolutely deserve to have the book thrown at them. But you don't have a right to trample on my rights and my ability to be who I am as a sovereign human being because of your fears or your warped sense of ideology.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
That's exactly it. Well, and that's why that's why I was encouraged that our businesses are like, wait a minute, I don't think this TikTok ban's a bad thing. Not because they think TikTok is awesome or that the CCP is awesome. It's they realize that the government is desperate to get control in every area of our life. And so they're using the bad guy of the CCP to give themselves more power that they can use on other things, right? And I think that the encouraging thing is, of the 80,000 businesses that I talked to through this Freedom Economy Index, half of them see that now, and I don't think half of them would have seen it 2 years ago. I think that's my point, because absolutely you're right. Yeah. This is an unhealthy grab of power by the government yet again, cloaked in the "we're going to protect you" lie. And so, no, I'm not a fan of this, but I'm just encouraged that businesses are thinking about it a little bit more.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's too bad Perry isn't with us, because I'd love to hear what he has to say about censorship and the ways around censorship. Goodell was also supposed to be on this call, and he has a military background. And so there's a lot of tools that are, available to move beyond that. But then we get into the legal realm, right? So it becomes an interesting issue that we are faced with.
One more thing to add, Andrew. Drew, one more thing to add.
You bet.
If you look at the last, so if you look at 2017, pivotal things happened in 2017. Okay. You can like or not like Alex Jones, and you can, whatever your opinion is, doesn't matter. They absolutely showed us that they have the power to deplatform anyone. If they could take that man had 10 million views a day on YouTube. That's right. They took his content. It's gone. It's erased. Now he's got his own platform. He was prepared for it because he's a prognosticator of the future. He can see what they're going to do. But look what's happened since then. we're not allowed to watch Russia television because the czars of information have said that we're not able to think for ourselves. Now, fast forward to this year's WEF meeting, Davos meeting. During this meeting, the number one or number two threat to the global risk this year, they have the top 30 global risks. They do it every year. One or two is, guess what it is? Misinformation and disinformation. They spend a third or more of their meeting this year with all the powerful, OpenAI was there, NVIDIA was there, all these companies were there. And that they talked about how are they going to secure the information sectors so that they don't have misinformation and hurt people. So who's hurting people? Apparently it's us.
It's us. We're the dangerous people. Look at us.
Yeah.
So I think what I'll do is then jump into Unplugged. Now this, I don't know, Thomas, if you had a chance to see Unplugged. And Andrew, you said you're a bit familiar about Unplugged. But what's really exciting to me about Unplugged is it's our own phone operating system, our own ecosystem, if you can see that, you know. And if we could have a phone system that's capable of securing our data, securing our information, and that's one of the reasons why I'm a big proponent of Holochain and its ability to do that, where it creates agency, autonomy, and security. I think that is a huge step in the right direction. Now, all right, tell us how familiar you are with this ecosystem, this phone, and what you see for a solution like this, Andrew, if you have any familiar with this or not.
Yeah, I'm somewhat familiar with it. I've been following them. I'm really excited by the prospect of it, right? You know, there was that question a while back, if Elon Musk made a smartphone, would you you use it? And I think a lot of people are like, yeah, because we don't trust Google and Apple. And I know we might get into this a little bit. Do we trust Elon Musk? Well, we'll get into that a little bit. But I'm encouraged by this kind of thing. I think this is an important part of the parallel economy. I was in a conference recently, and people asked me, what's the biggest risk right now that we have? And I'm like, well, it's these phones, right? There's that is a huge risk area because communication is key in any strategic engagement. And if we can't communicate, or if our communication is censored in some way, that is a real risk. I think I don't know a ton about this company, except that I'm excited that they're working on it. I think the big challenge for the parallel economy is going to be this, though. It's going to be very easy to be like, hey, I'm part of the parallel economy. You're part of the parallel economy. You should buy from me, even though I have a crappy product. And I'm not saying that they have a crappy product, but I've seen a lot of businesses out there that are like, hey, they're going to throw up the parallel economy or the freedom economy flag, and then they don't have a great product. And we've dealt with a couple of these here at Red Balloon. And so what I want to see is companies not just check the freedom box, but also check the excellence box. And that's, clearly what we're trying to do at Red Balloon. But I think that's going to be the biggest danger. I think these companies are not going to get to scale if they're obsessed with the fact that they're in a category of the freedom or parallel economy, and not obsessed with making a market product that people want to buy. And so I think that's going to be the big challenge. Now, the selling point could be, freedom, data security, encryption, all this. And that's absolutely, but they need to make sure they absolutely execute on it. We were working with a CRM, and honestly, they were values aligned on a lot of stuff, and their software just didn't check the boxes for us. It didn't do a very good job, and they had a lot of security holes. And so it's those kind of things that I think are going to kill this parallel economy, is not obsessing about excellence that the Amazons and the Apples did early on. So anyway, that's my take. What's your take, Thomas?
Yeah. Well, and one of the things that, like, that's what my wife and I saw, right? My wife is she's a tech genius when it comes to website development, WordPress, how to use it all. And then, both of us are marketing backgrounds, and have some sales skills as well. So you got a little bit of a mix there. And one of the things that we did is we started Global Catapult, because what we find is that, and I've actually done 3 startups where they didn't think big enough.
Yeah.
Right. Like one of them was an amazing communication platform. It's still available, but it's kind of past, but it had a communication where you could text and had its own API set up for your profiles for LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook and so on. And it had an algorithm that it knew if you liked each other, like if you were in an area and someone was part of the platform, if you like the same kind of music and the same kind of like food stuff, you kind of get connected. And then the other thing was that it had you could share. It was a business card holder as well, so all of your content information was on this thing, right?
Right.
Problem is, it started too small, and there wasn't enough capital to give it the runway needed.
Yep.
So I went out and tried to find money for them, but the problem is it didn't have the right foothold. So
yeah, you got to have scale. Two-sided marketplaces require incredible scale, or they're going to fail.
And it requires incredible money. You have to have the money to be able to keep it, to get in front of the right people to get it going. So I got myself in front of people and they heard me out. They at least met with me, but it wasn't the right fit for them. So now what the Lord's done is I'm connected with the Christian brothers that are in the renewable energy space. And I've got friends that are involved in some technology and some disruptors to big pharma. This is what the Lord does. It takes, but what we're doing is we're raising money first.
Yeah.
Right. Go out and make sure that we can build it. Right. And sustain it. That's what I see is what you're saying. It's like, we don't want crappy products. What we want, if it's a good idea and it's a good concept and you've got good proof of concept, let's go out and make sure you've got enough money to get this to the right space so that people can start to buy it and use it and interact with it. Right.
Yep. And I think that's going to be the danger, is either we think too small or we're not that, tenaciously pursuing excellence. And we end up with bad products. And then we say, oh, our business failed because we were censored or because we were doxxed. No, it's actually because you did a bad product. Like, businesses fail all the time. Businesses on both sides of the aisle. And so I think that is going to be one of the big challenges for this phone company and for all the companies in this space. We need to be excellent, be at scale. And, as I told people, you don't want to be the black liberal who sees systemic racism everywhere. You don't want to be the conservative who's like, oh, everyone's out to get me. Well, no, sometimes you just have a bad product and it's on you.
Yeah. Like Chick-fil-A. Sorry.
Yeah.
I apologize.
I like Chick-fil-A.
Lots of sugar, Chick-fil-A. Lots of sugar.
I grant you. If I'm going to die, I'd rather die with chocolate cake in my stomach.
Is Jeremy's chocolate still going? I would just check them out recently. Is that still a thing, or are they?
I actually met with Jeremy and Caleb, the co-CEO, when they were in the middle of that. That they didn't make a lot of money on that.
Okay.
And they were basically, they did it as a marketing stunt. They sold 1 million bars or whatever it was, and then they're like, check the box, good to go. We're a media company. We're not a chocolate company. So I think they did fine on it, in the same way that Elon Musk sold a bunch of flamethrowers, but he's not really in the flamethrower business. I just think it was just a big media hit, and they did their thing and then moved on. So.
All right. So we got Perry here. So let's try to use up some of Perry's time while he's here with us. Now, we discussed the Black Swan event. Andrew was mentioning that, generally you can't pinpoint or you can't predict a Black Swan event. Otherwise, it isn't a Black Swan event.
It's not a Black Swan event, right?
Perry, we've talked about an Ice 9 event to add on to the Black Swan event. What are your thoughts about them shutting down the internet? Is that something that's actually something they could do? And if so, what are some of the solutions that we can use, like Holochain, to circumvent something like that to happen?
Not only is it possible, it's essentially inevitable. It's a guarantee. Any military worth their salt has a plan to deny their enemies the field of battle, and communications is a big chunk of the modern battlefield. And so the Russians or the Americans or the Chinese, if they don't have all of their adversaries' subsea fibers already instrumented with remotely detonatable mines, then they can only be called incompetent. So yeah, it's definitely possible. It is almost certain to happen. And the good news is that with with this next generation of breakthroughs in cryptographically secured distributed systems, we can build agent-based systems that essentially are uninterrupted by such an event. And so, yeah, I'm not really too worried about it, but it is going to impact a lot of people that haven't chosen to be prepared. But that's at this point a choice.
That's interesting. And sorry, and Drew, I'm going to jump in. So, but if you don't have the physical infrastructure between locations, how does that, because you still got to get the information. Is it wireless, satellite? How are you getting between locations to communicate?
Yeah, I won't spend a long time describing the technical details, but basically, you definitely are going to have partitions in the global network fabric. Partition is a technical name for basically islands of communication, as they break down communications between nations and across oceans. Even if those can be restored in a reasonably timely manner, minutes, hours, days, you're still going to be locked in these places where you have communications, like your local cellular might be up, but you can't reach, and you can reach the next city, but you can't reach Moscow or Taipei or New York, right?
Yep.
And the systems that I'm talking about, these agent-based systems, use what's called a distributed hash table. Like when you want to change the state of the system, you emit records that get distributed to the agents that you do have communications with, and as those agents communicate with each other, both immediately and over time, like as people travel from place to place, all of the relevant communications records migrate from island to island or partition to partition. And so what a communications or a transaction that might have taken milliseconds before may take minutes or hours or even days, but the communication will complete. The transaction will take place, and there's nothing they can do to stop it. Literally, pigeons with like SD cards taped to their legs can make the system work. So that's a sort of a rough idea of the
it is amazing. I was in Cape Town last week in South Africa, and somebody hit some fiber optics with a boat or something, and everybody's cell signal the data was down for like 6 hours in Cape Town, right? This is a big, meaningful, this is not a third world city. And it was shocking to me how vulnerable a city like that is, right?
Yeah.
And I'm sure there were other providers, but the provider I was on, they were just out for 4 or 5 hours trying to fix the fiber.
Yeah, it's crazy. And just to encourage you, the outflow of this, when it does happen, will be that the centralized systems that are even distributed, things like Bitcoin and Ethereum and all these other global consensus networks, even very advanced ones like Hashgraph, will cease to function. But our adversary systems, like the government sponsored CBDCs, won't cease to function because they'll make sure that they maintain dark fiber or encrypted land radio systems. Military grade communications will keep their CBDCs up, while the alternative cryptocurrencies will cease to function, which will be a big advertising campaign for them. Look, you guys can't use Bitcoin or Ethereum or any of this stuff. It doesn't work. But look, the CBDCs continue to work. But the good news is that we can choose now to build systems that also continue to work uninterrupted during these situations, including cryptocurrencies. So it's exciting.
It's interesting that you said that a civilian vessel caused the disruption.
That's what I understand. Again, this is where we live in a world that.
Just think about that. We've had a lot of events in the last 20 years that have had catastrophic consequences based on civilian vessels or vehicles, or you've had the refugee boat smash into the U.S. naval ship back in, I think that was like 2007, 2006, right? You've had a lot of interesting. It's very interesting that it was a civilian vessel that did that. Now didn't they shut down communications in Iran for 3 hours while they went and got Assad Balari or whatever his name was. They shut down the internet for three hours. So they definitely have the capability.
Oh, absolutely. Also, they say it was a civilian vessel. I have no idea, because like we live in a world where whatever's said, announced in the media, it's like opposite game.
Well, some of it lies in the ocean somewhere.
Yeah, something happened. Let's blame it on a fisherman because they're bad.
All right. So there's an organization. It reminds me, there's an organization that they go and see what internet has been shut down across the world. And so I started investigating this organization to see and learn more about it. And Obama's CTO is actually the director of this organization. And I thought that was a pretty interesting space for him to be living in, which got me to thinking along these lines. And so, Perry, I mentioned before earlier when you were unplugged, the company called Unplugged. Did you have a chance to look at their website and look at this new cell phone technology that's going to be coming into the marketplace in May? And if so, is this going to be a good solution for people to jump into as a great transition into freedom from big tech?
It's hard to say. Like the big, no matter how reliable your platforms are, the big question mark in mobile communications that hooks up to the standard LTE or 5G networks is the baseband chip. The low level hindbrain of your phone is totally closed silicon. It can have arbitrary nation state level exploits in it that we could never find, and this would apply to any communications mechanism that attaches to the global LTE network. Probably a Wi-Fi connected device would be a much more reliable thing to use, and we don't really need cellular communications to. I would say, just long story short, get an old wireless Wi-Fi device and use that for your cryptographically secured communications, and assume that your cellular connected devices are arbitrarily exploited.
Interesting. Do you want to add to that, Andrew or Thomas?
I think that Perry is probably the expert in this area, so I will. The Bible says, "Better to everyone to think you a fool than to open your mouth and remove all doubt," or something like that. So I'll.
And this is Perry. This is Perry's like lane, right? Like, I just want to learn from Perry. I've had the pleasure of learning how to wire up a sound boost system at a church. I thought I knew what I was doing. I'm like, I thought I was just gonna plug stuff in. I didn't think I had to rebuild the system. And Perry's just like very calmly, do this and do that. So yeah, Perry's the expert for sure.
Just sort of just to encourage you, the next generation systems based on these agent-based platforms are so lightweight and so simple and so powerful at scale that you just don't need a lot of horsepower to run them. And yeah, it's quite exciting. We're not going to need a lot of, like, in my opinion, the last 10 years in the revelation that has been coming in cryptographic communications primitives that we have access to, it basically puts the individual on the same playing field as the NSA. So we will be able to establish cryptographically secured sound communication and unstoppable communications and commerce systems that our enemies in these big woke governments and corporations just won't be able to fight against.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So we'll leave that concept and jump back into the world of woke. And, what I often wonder about, Andrew, is, where did the woke concept come from? And why hasn't many people jumped into the understanding of transhumanism or the post-human world like Laura Atoli speaks about? I don't know if you watched the video on Laura Atoli, but why is there still such a gap between that understanding in so many different arenas?
people. I mean, you know, this is the problem is you don't want to believe something that's going to make life harder for you. And right now, you know, it's, you know, we can point to all the problems that you see in the economy and the job market and all those things. We live in a very prosperous society. And
Right.
the woke concept really came from people being awake to systemic racism or CRT, you know, type of stuff. And, you know, I would even say when the unions started back in the whenever they started long time ago, there were probably some situations where it was kids in coal mines or whatever it was. Like there was probably a reason for, hey, we need to figure out a better way to take care of people. It turns into organized labor, and then it gets very ugly very quickly. And I would imagine that there were some people that needed a push away from, actually they were racist and they were being silly and they weren't being they didn't believe in meritocracy the other way. And so all of a sudden they get this term woke. And then when wokeness really came into the workplace is actually I trace it back to around 2008 when you have the Occupy Wall Street movement. So you have Occupy Wall Street, you have all these people who all of a sudden are saying big banks are bad. And big banks don't like that. And big companies are bad. Big companies don't like that. And so these big companies kind of look around and they're like, okay, how do we be the good guy again? And they said, well, who has the biggest microphone in our society? And the answer was the mainstream liberal media. And so they said, if we can say the things that make the mainstream liberal media happy, then they'll say good things about us. And then we can go and do whatever we want. So we can, you know, be Nike and we can complain about systemic race or about slavery in the world. And you say that to the media and the media says, oh yeah, Nike, and then they basically use slave labor to build tennis shoes over in Indonesia. And so they can get away with whatever they want as long as they say the right things. And so that's what happened in about 2008. You started seeing businesses saying, started to make proclamations about things that had nothing to do with their business and were left-leaning liberal points of view. And they started to do this systematically. Well, the problem is then the businesses started to believe it. So the CEO said this over and over again, and then all the people inside the business start to believe it. Then they started hiring people from Marxist universities and putting them in the HR department. And lo and behold, these businesses, all of a sudden, they actually have internalized these woke ideologies that they started as just a PR tool. And now it's in their guts. And I think that's part of what happened with wokeness in the workplace, which is obviously my main area is focusing on the workplace. And I think the way that we fix this is you have a lot of CEOs who have abdicated the job of building culture for their business, and they need to get back to that. They need to get rid of their woke HR department, and they need to hire Red Balloon to do all of their hiring. And then they're going to get in a better spot for their business. But that's where I trace back the wokeness in the workplace, at least.
Yeah. And I would come right behind that and agree with that. It's all about indoctrination, right? If you look at the communist and the Marxist playbook, you know, you can think for yourself. I mean, don't take my word for it. I don't want to sway anyone's opinion, but if you go and look at it and read the Communist Manifesto or, you know, Karl Marx's book, like a few of them, right? Like they all have this playbook, and it's all go after the children first. If you can get a generation of children that don't believe in what their forefathers believed, you know, that's where you're coming up with this colonialism and all these different buzzwords, right? It's colonialism is bad. You know, you name it. But the biggest thing about universities is they've gone into universities and academia, unfortunately, is now the prerequisite to get any formative job or career. Even if you're just doing something that doesn't require a lot of brain power, most of them are still requiring university education. There's a reason for that, right? If they get you to university, they've got a systematic way of deprogramming or taking all of the things that they've learned, all the things that they innately know, and replacing it with ridiculous, nonsensical belief systems. Like, you know, and we all know what they are. I'm not gonna get your channel shut down today, Andrew, but we all know what they are, right? And you know, I've got children that have gone to university here, and I've watched what they're learning, and I've listened to some of the rhetoric. They have a rhetoric class. Think about that. It's a rhetoric class, and the rhetoric class is teaching them not just have an open dialogue around it. It's a certain way to steer and navigate conversations and form narratives, whether they're true or not, but based on experts. The experts have it all. The thing about science is I get frustrated. Well, there's a consensus among scientists. There will never be a consensus among scientists. Scientists are designed to continue to research and debunk and debunk and debunk.
Push back against things. Exactly.
Push back. Exactly. That's why the whole climate, the thing that's in the sky there, you see all the things happening. It's the Hegelian dialectic. They go and they create the problem. Then they're the ones that got the remedy, and we're the ones begging for it because a lot of us are ostriches. We don't really want to know what's real. Right.
Yeah. No,
and that's what this is so. That's why this is so important because we got you got 100 friends. You got 1,000 friends. I got 100 friends. Friends got 5,000 friends, and all of a sudden the friends are now. Well, I didn't realize you thought that way. Well, I didn't realize you. I had no idea. That's what has to happen. That's the awakening with your survey that you were talking about earlier.
Yeah,
that's what's happening. Is an awakening. People are going, that doesn't seem right.
Yeah.
Right.
And that is the awakening. Yeah, that's happening.
Yeah.
Another really interesting finding on that survey, we ask businesses, when you see a bachelor's degree from a mainstream university on a resume, is that a positive, a negative, or a neutral? 40% said neutral. So I was like, well, that's encouraging, right? Because they say, look, the degree doesn't mean anything in the same way on whether I'm going to hire this. I want a smart person. I want a person who can do the job, who lives in, I care about merit, not about, virtue signaling. But was really encouraging, 42% of the employers said that it wasn't a negative, or it wasn't a positive, it wasn't a neutral, it was a negative. So if they see a bachelor's degree on a resume, they will pass over that resume because they are sick of what's coming out of our universities today. 42% of 80,000 businesses. Let that sink in. So that $100,000 degree that you just finished getting from University of Michigan or Alabama is actually hurting your job prospects for businesses in this freedom economy. Think about that. 80,000 businesses.
Yeah. And you look at what you're doing with Red Balloon, like my wife not that long ago before she started this company was applying for a job. She's a incredibly like her resume is strong, but she wasn't getting any interviews. And I said, well, it's because of the algorithms, Janet. Like they know by your job history, they know by the way that you write your resume, they know that you're in your late 40s. They knew. So right away, half of the filters, you're not even getting past the filters.
That's right.
And that's
even
what's
though you're
wrong.
Competent. Yeah.
Exactly. And that's where you talk about meritocracy. Like we're not hiring on that anymore. We're hiring on this is the lane and this is the system that's going to say what's what. And it's like when you go to the bank for a loan. Doesn't matter how long you've been banking at the bank and how great you've been. If the computer spits back no, it's no.
Right. And that's why it's so important to get a parallel economy, because for your wife is super competent. Well, there's a lot of businesses that would like to hire someone like that, right? It's a tight labor market. It will continue to be a tight labor market. And so, but if we are being kicked out of the main economy, we need to have our own economy at scale, right? That does focus on excellence. That's not just, here because they're showing up, but because they do really good work. And I think that is the story, is these businesses, which I think are different than the mainstream big businesses in America. These freedom economy businesses are like, no, thank you. I would like to not hire someone from a mainstream university. I would like to hire someone instead who shows up, works hard, does their job, is not a whiner. And we want to be in a spot where, people like your wife can find a job with a great company that won't get kicked out by the algorithms. And because they're looking for the right people. So that's why I'm doing this work, not because I'm making the most money doing the parallel economy thing, but it is a very important job to be doing right now.
Well, I applaud it. So my son is 15 and he's smart enough. He could go and he could probably take any course in the university and be fine. My encouragement to him was he's watching us be an entrepreneur. He sees some of the benefits. And I've encouraged him. I said, pick a trade and he's going to become an electrician.
I love that.
And oddly enough, he wants to live in Georgia. Savannah, Georgia is where he wants to go.
There's great food in Savannah, Georgia. I love the food.
But he's got a plan
Yeah.
Because I've said, look, you don't get sold down, because all of his mom's side, they're all academics. They all, a couple of them are process operators that work in the oil and gas field, but he's going to be an engineer. And I said, that's the ticket, because you can be a missionary, you can do all kinds of stuff, and you can own your own company. Right? You've got freedom.
Yeah.
And that parallel economy you're talking about, he's going to be lined up perfectly for it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I love it.
Cool. So, Thomas, I wrote this article here, the digital ID. Can you see that, or did I share the wrong screen?
Yep.
I shared the wrong screen.
You gotta share just the screen. Yeah.
It's
Right
the
now
first time
you're sharing this screen, you're going back. Yeah.
This is the first time I've used StreamYard.
Yeah. So if you go into,
So I got it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And in this article, this blog that I wrote, I talk about the exact thing that you talked about with education, and how education really is at the core of the identity of people. And it's interesting how, the Big Bang and the, evolution is at the core of their scientific model, right? The scientific basis, and that we came from nothing. But it's much more sinister than that. It's more than nothing. It's actually chaos. And if you get into chaos theory, chaos theory is actually infinity, but infinity onto a darkening understanding, right? And so out of that is coming what you talked about, the systematic this what is Dr. Robert Malone call it? He called it there was a name that he called it. I had it on the tip of my mind there. But the systematic thinking around these systems, right? Just like you talked about. So good stuff there. So we'll jump into the next one, and it looks like we've lost Perry again. We got 3 minutes left. So last question then would be, will Trump get back into office, and what will it take for it to happen? Are we going to see the reemergence of Trump?
Oh man, I have a lot of people who are political pundits and political advisors, and man, it depends on the day on whether they think Trump's going to get into office or not. It's and not because he couldn't win the populist vote. It's I don't think that he's got the populist vote. I'm not worried about that. I think that there's a lot of people concerned, like, do my votes count? What do they mean? And so I think that's going to be the big wild card. I think that it will be. I am concerned. We talk about black swan events. Trump wins, there's a lot of disruption. Trump loses, there's a lot of disruption. There's going to be people angry on both sides. This is one of the most polarizing elections that we have. We saw the last one was that way. January 6th was not insurrection. Am I allowed to say that? Yeah. Well, now we really got censored. But I think that it's going to be fascinating to see where it plays out. I think if all of us spend too much time obsessing about the election, we're gonna lose an opportunity, because while we all vote once a year, once every 4 years for a president, you vote with your dollars and you vote with your time every single day, every single hour of the day. And so my encouragement to people, I don't know if Trump's going to get into office, but if you just sit on your couch watching Fox News, wringing your hands until November, you are burying your talents in the ground. And the problem's not going to get fixed that way. The problem's going to get fixed by you getting off your couch and doing something. And that's my encouragement is, go start shopping at Public Square. Go tell your friends about Red Balloon. Stand up at work for what's right, rather than just going along to get along. Because if all of us start doing that at scale, I'm actually highly optimistic that will have a huge impact on this country. And so that's my big encouragement. I focus on the election. I think about the election, but I also, and I'm friends with Don Jr. Don Sr. is, we disagree on a number of things. He did a lot of good stuff for the economy, and I'd love to see him in office again. But don't obsess about it. Go do stuff, right? Build your business,
Right on.
love your family,
1
bless your
p.m.
community. Yeah,
And
do that stuff.
you gotta leave. So
Oh
thank
yeah,
you so much for your time, Andrew. We really appreciate
Yeah.
it.
Yep.
Check out
It was nice to,
revolut.work.
yeah, I'd like to reconnect with you sometime, Andrew. I think you and I have
Good.
some alignment.
Yes, we do, and we both have great beards.
Yeah.
Bye, y'all.
Yeah.
All right. Take care. So Thomas, thanks for joining us.
Yeah.
Any final
Just want to,
words
can I
before
add
I
a couple
close
things about
out?
Trump? Can I add just a couple things about Trump?
Sure.
So I think Donald Trump, it absolutely wins the election. However, I don't think he's going to even get a chance to, the election's not going to, the Democrats know that they've lost. Even with what they've done with the border and all what's happened there, the lawfare is what's going to end this. Okay. They're gonna bankrupt this man through the lawfare. $450 million judgment in New York on absolutely bogus. It was a kangaroo trial, just like Alex Jones's trial was a kangaroo trial. The system is broken, and we might need to see this. We might need to see the actual effects and fallout of what happens when all the Americans that you can see. I mean, it's clear as day when you see the amount of people showing up at Trump's rallies. It's clear. It's clear as day. But we may need to see this fall. The system needs to fall so that it can be rebuilt in what it's always meant to be. Because you have bureaucracy controlling everything, and the electorate, it doesn't do anything. And that's not what these republics and the Confederation of Canada was set up on. It was set up on people having a true influence and voice in the matters that affect them as citizens of a country. Right? We're controlled by in Canada. There's no disputing it. We're run by the World Economic Forum and the United Nations. And George Soros says, go back and look. Don't take my word for it. Just go and research it. Where they brag about it. They're bold about it. They don't hide it. I mean, Chrystia Freeland did a book with George Soros way back when. Look at her background. She's a board member for the World Economic Forum as we speak. These are things that you got to be concerned about. But politics is what it is. And Donald Trump, I don't care if you like him, don't like him. If he gets voted and people vote him in, they've already said they're not going to accept it. They've already said it. They've already said they're not going to accept it. So, that's what Andrew's talking about. There's going to be either way. It's not going to be a pretty sight when it's over, right? So, what do we do as Christians or as people that believe in the Holy Spirit and believe that God has? It's all God's will, and we've got to be ready to do what God asks us. And he said, not bury our talents in the ground, to get our talents out there and put ourselves out there and take some lumps, take a few bruises. What you'll find is when you stand on your principles and your values and you stand against the principalities, over time, it gets more comfortable. It's not comfortable when it starts. I can tell you this. I wasn't comfortable not wearing a mask. I wasn't. Not one day went by where I went, oh man, I'm looking forward to this. I'm looking forward to going to the restaurant and having my row with the people at the front or the managers. No, I did it because I believed in the principle and I knew that I was going to have to make a stand at some point. So I just chose to make my stand at the very beginning, right? Sooner or later, we're all going to have to awaken to the fact that things are not as prosperous and as good as they once were. And that's on purpose, right? But we as people of God, children of God, have the ability as a community to do exactly what Perry's talking about. Perry's telling us he's got the coordinates. He's got a download. He knows exactly what needs to happen to break away from the dark system, right?
Amen.
What you're doing here, Andrew, is keep doing it. Plow through. Because this is the stuff that changes the system, changes the algorithm. Get people to say, you know what? I had no idea. I'm not here to tell you anything that's not true. Don't believe me. It's all there. Go and look it up. It's all go to the World Economic Forum website and just search around and see what they're saying. Go to COP28's website, see what they're saying. It's all there. They're laying it out for us. They can't hide it because we have to accept it. That's the game. That's how it works.
Amen. Amen and amen.
And get to know Jesus. By the way, get to know Jesus. Jesus is King. Jesus is the way. All day long,
Hallelujah.
every day. So
my son just had a dream of Jesus last night, so very exciting. These are the days. Psalms 84, my friend. We will pioneer and make our way through. So thank you very much, Perry, for joining us.
18.
You're on mute, Perry, so if you want to add any last comments before you go.
I appreciated the call and the opportunity to hear you all. It was very, very interesting. I just want to summarize. I think the time of us being sales boys or news boys is at an end. It's time to be a delivery boy. Let's get this done.
Amen. Amen. I love it, Perry.
Good
to see you, bro.
I'll just finish off by saying check out the Rebels Challenge on MarketEdge.pro. If you want to check out Thomas Fisher, how do they find you, Thomas?
I'll send you my coordinates. You can go to
Go ahead.
Yeah, you go to globalcatapult.com or just our website's almost up and running, or you can hit me up at tfisher@globalcatapult.com.
Perfect.
Right.
And we will be back in the weeks and months to come. So have yourselves a great and awesome day.
Thanks, guys. Take care. Cheers.